Gosh, man. I mean, it's a weird week for the Kansas City Chiefs fans and Taylor Swift. They were really in love with this Kansas City Chiefs team. They really thought that, hey, we have a chance to win the Super Bowl here. Obviously, it did not go the way they thought, and they learned a valuable lesson. And
Well, Pop, I can tell you this. They learned a damn good lesson. And sometimes love just really hurts. And also, go Birds.
well. What a week. We had the Super Bowl. NFL season's over with. Now we get into the heart of the NHL, NBA, and starting to get into some of the madness of the college basketball world. And hey, spring training is here, folks. Pitchers and catchers have already reported to Lakeland, Florida to start, throwing the ball. And we already actually have an injury for the Detroit Tigers. We're going to be talking about that and more on this episode of the Super Sports Bros. Welcome, everyone. My name is Antonio Pop, and I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Evan Angel. Evan, how you doing today?
Doing all right. How are you?
Good. I mean, what a year. What a year, and what a really interesting Super Bowl. I didn't think it would end up the way it did.
That was fun.
Yeah,
that was a lot of fun.
That was an ass kicking, straight up.
Belt to ass was the defining feature of the year.
Yeah, it was. And I mean, it started that way for the Lions and ended that way for the Philadelphia Eagles, especially in this game. I thought it'd be a lot closer than it ended up being. I think a key to this win for the Eagles was their ability to get to Patrick Mahomes. We talked about it a little bit last week, limiting Mahomes' mobility, especially with those, broken plays, and he could scramble. And that's what they did. They got 6 sacks on the guys, on Patrick Mahomes. They did not blitz at all during this game, and they, ended up with defending a great game and playing great. Cooper DeJean had a pick 6 touchdown, his first interception in the biggest game of his career, and as a birthday present too. You get a guy like Saquon Barkley, didn't run for a lot, but he wore the team out, and he did exactly kind of what this Eagles team wanted him to do. He was only, he had less rushing yards than Jalen Hurts with 57, and he only averaged 2.3 yards per carry, but they kind of used him as a disguise. They threw a lot. They had a touchdown to Devontae Smith, a touchdown to A.J. Brown. But the man, the myth, the legend here has to be Jalen Hurts with how he played in this game. He was 17 for 22, 221 yards, averaging 10 yards per pass. He was sacked twice at a QBR rating of 75.4 in comparative to Patrick Mahomes' god-awful game. And they threw the ball a lot. How much of this game came down to Andy Reid and that offense not relinquishing the ball from Patrick Mahomes' hands and relying solely on him? He threw the ball 32 times for a total of 257 yards, averaging 8 yards per pass, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, sacked 6 times, as we mentioned, with a QBR rating of 11.4. How much of this game was due to Patrick Mahomes' lack of play or good play in this game?
I mean, you can attribute it, sure. But honestly, this was just Philly's defense just flexing their muscles at this point. I mean, like you said earlier, 6 sacks, and not a single one of them came on a blitz. I mean, that you don't see that in the modern NFL.
Yeah.
It was pure domination from the very first snap. I mean, you looked at it, and it's just Philly was complete throughout the whole game. I mean, it was wonderful to watch. I mean, I was getting a little worried because I'm like, okay, this lead's getting a little big. Is something going to go wrong that we're going to be like, well, great. But, I mean, Philly just was clicking on all cylinders, and it wasn't just offensively either. The defense was the star of the show. I mean, defense wins championships in that, and I mean, that was proven right there.
Oh, I mean, most definitely. I mean, you got a special teams, a defensive touchdown there, too, with Cooper DeJean. How clutch of a touchdown and interception that was, because they were driving at that point in the game, looking to get down. I think it was, I believe, 2 to 3 scores at that time in the game, and then that was just the dagger. That
I wouldn't call that the dagger. I would call the former practice squad linebacker, Zach Bond, for the Saints.
Yes.
The dude last year was on the practice squad for the Saints. Didn't play a single starting snap.
Yeah.
Eagles are like, hey, we'll just pick him up on a waiver. He's only on a 1-year deal. Turns into an all-pro, first-team all.
I mean, and those are the guys, the diamonds in the roughs. We talk about them in Detroit being like a Malcolm Rodriguez. Like those guys that you don't necessarily think they're going to start day one, but they look so good in camp and have this attitude about them.
Philly just knows how to draft. Philly knows what, like, I mean, people were saying, oh, you drafted Quinnion Mitchell. Why didn't you draft Cooper DeJean? Well, 2 picks later, who ended up in Philly. I mean, Philly, Howie Roseman and just company just know how to draft. I mean, it's the players they have, they're all studs at their position, and it's because of the draft. It's not because they're out signing these crazy guys. I mean, they traded for A.J. Brown 3 years ago, but you look at their roster, it's constructed through the draft.
Yeah.
And Jalen Hurts, second-round pick. Yeah. Devontae Smith dropped to pick 10. I mean, the Heisman Trophy winner of that year dropped to 10. Yeah. Like, what are we doing, guys? Like, what's going on here? Their team is full of guys that literally just... Philly doesn't have to draft positions of need. They're like, oh, shit, this guy's available? Well, fuck you guys. It's ours now.
Yeah, and then they do a very good job at getting quality for what they have. One of my questions is because I felt like this game told me 2 things. I was very high on Patrick Mahomes earlier in the year, especially what he was doing with this team and this caliber of offense that he had. Very lackluster comparative to the previous years.
Your take on Travis Kelce being the X Factor aged very well.
I mean, I thought he would show up. Those throws were critiqued, in my opinion, bad. They were backdoor throws.
It's what Mahomes is known for, but Mahomes looked like complete loss.
Yeah, and this brings me to my first question. Is the now conversation that would have been there in this episode where I would be comparing Patrick Mahomes to Tom Brady as far as if the Chiefs won that game, do you think the GOAT conversation is now out of reach for Patrick Mahomes?
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. I mean, the first half showed it. I mean, you look at it and you never could, I mean, you can say this all you want, but Brady could be down by that many scores and he'd still find a way to win. He doesn't doesn't try to play hero ball, and he plays sound the game. Mahomes tried to will himself to win that game. I mean, he had almost 300 yards. Those were just to play up, just to try to catch up.
My thing is this with the Patrick Mahomes GOAT conversation. He has the prowess to do it. He's been to 5 Super Bowls. He's lost 2. He's won 3. In those, he has 3 Super Bowl MVPs, and he's only been in the league since 2017. So I'm not saying that the conversation's totally out the door yet. Like you're saying.
He's going to have to do a lot.
Yeah, but he's going to have to really work on the back end here to get to that next level to be able, because this would have been 4 Super Bowls for him and a 3-peat, something Brady has never done. Obviously, did not win this game, and it was a very it was one of the second worst QBR ratings in the Super Bowl era. The first was a Peyton Manning a while back. He had 8.7 QBR, so he played terrible for what he's demanding of himself. And it's one of those things that you need to figure out if you're Patrick Mahomes. How are you going to convince your teammates to take the necessary pay cuts because they are paying a lot of players this year?
I don't think you have to worry about that. Here's the thing. Yes, Patrick Mahomes is trying to chase Brady.
Yes.
The race is over. I mean, the thing is, with Brady didn't take chances when he was down. I mean, he was down. Yes, we look at the 28-3. But here's the thing. Brady's not going to try to force a pass that literally isn't there.
And Brady talked a lot about this in one of his interviews. Like he said, when he played Kansas City that first time and they beat him with Tampa Bay, he knew everything the Kansas City defense is going to do. I feel like these quarterbacks nowadays, except for Jared Goff and maybe Matthew Stafford, walk into these games and sometimes do not know what these defenses are going to do, and they read and react, where Brady was like, I'm going to attack. And that's a difference between, obviously, the GOAT and a Patrick Mahomes player. But to that credit, he looked lost out there.
Speaking of Brady, Brady's now been witnessed both of Philly's Super Bowl wins.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
Once in the booth, once as a player.
I mean that.
But yes, you're right. I mean, Mahomes he didn't look like he knew what he was doing. And I mean, to your credit, I mean, the thing is, Mahomes is great. Yes, a great quarterback. But here's the thing. He's trying to be hero even when he has the weapons to do it. You have DeAndre Hopkins. Yes, he's not in his prime.
Yeah.
But DeAndre Hopkins still has baseball mitts for hands. I mean, the dude, you threw the ball like 5 yards behind him. You throw it 2 yards ahead of him, the dude's catching it. You barely gave it to Travis Kelce. I mean, you looked his way twice.
But the thing is, he didn't catch the ball either time. So I think Patrick,
because you're trying to force it.
Yeah, but the thing is he felt pressured every time because that, as we said all year long. What did I say in the Bills game? The offensive line of the Kansas City Chiefs you're going to need to play well every single down for them to win this game.
They also ran the ball way too much. I mean, yes, you have Pacheco back from injury.
Yeah.
But the fact that you're just relying on that, Philly's defensive line is the best in football. Why are you trying to run every down? It's not going to work.
Which now begs my second question. Now that we're done with the Kansas City Chief parade as the best team in the NFL, some team has to take the mantle. I think we're going to see a Philly dynasty here.
I hope so, but at the same time,
they have the numbers, they have the guys, they have the running back, they have the quarterback, they have the wide receivers, but they need to keep adding in the draft. And that's one of the things when you get that good and you have all those good skill guys, you don't know when your luck's going to run out. And I think, it's going to be tough for a Detroit team next year if they don't add quality players in this draft, even though it's littered with so many good quality players. I think it's going to be a tough discussion.
If this draft means everything for the future of the NFL,
it does.
How you draft and who you draft will determine your future for years to come.
Now,
I honestly think this.
Now, the window is still open. I may have a little bit overreacted, but now you have an issue like this. Washington's on the rise. You have a wild Cooper Kupp. You have a wild Myles Garrett.
You have a San Fran that might reload. I mean...
And then the thing is you have so many good teams, and then you have the Lions, who are getting a lot of guys back from injury. But I don't know if it's the lack of luster, because we saw what they were in the beginning of the season and how they faded off and the loss to Washington. But I don't feel like in the loss of coaches, I don't feel as confident as I was sitting in this spot a year ago, being like, all right, we're ready to rock and roll. Let's go win the Super Bowl. Right now, with these coaches that we've added on, which are good quality talent, we got the addition of John Morton. He is a former coach in 2022 under Ben Johnson. He's a son of Michigan, so he understands the pain of all of us, especially over here at the Super Sports Pros. He went to the Western Michigan University, go Broncos, and he served as the senior offensive assistant to Ben Johnson. Campbell hired him because of his creativity, and he doesn't really have to change the lingo up. He played in the NFL, and his most notable accomplishment was last year. He was the offensive coordinator for the Broncos and did incredible things with Bo Nix, propelling him and his team to the playoffs for the first time in a wild time. And next, on the defensive side, we promote from within, which this is a guy I want to talk to about the most. We talk about Calvin Shepard. We saw him a few years back in Hard Knocks. He was the linebackers coach. He was given, I think, the older senior guys a little bit hard time because Rodrigo was playing so well, and he had to start him. And it just, I like the mojo. I don't know John Morton, but I know Calvin Shepard. I feel like this is a good hire. What do you think? Do you think this is a smart way from Dan Campbell to say, in Detroit, we promote from within, we get a guy from the outside who's been here, and we're going to promote him? What do you think of these two pickups from the Lions offseason so far?
I think it's solid. I mean, time will only tell. And I mean, I think obviously what we see with the Lions and who they draft and how they draft will kind of determine what kind of defense or offense or both we'll see this year. I mean, based on the players we pick, it will kind of dictate how we want to run this season and basically who we let walk. I mean,
now, Mike
will tell everything.
Yeah. Now, going from two stellar coordinators, from a Ben Johnson to an Aaron Glenn, letting them go.
Speaking of stellar coordinators, credit to Vic Fangio.
Yes.
Vic Fangio for Philadelphia put on a masterclass of the defensive prowess.
And now he is the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. Yeah.
Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator.
The offensive coordinator.
Vic Fangio ain't going anywhere.
Okay. So that was my mix up there. Sorry,
Kellen
folks,
Moore, I don't know how I feel about that. I really don't. I mean, yeah, he's an offensive mind that's bounced around the league a bunch.
Yeah, but they need a lot more work.
They need a lot more than just that.
Yes.
I mean,
but back to the Detroit discussion. Do you think we improve with these hires, or we're just staying the same, or do you think we lack some, similarities, even though that they've been in this system, they've been under Aaron Glenn, they've been under Ben Johnson for a year or two? Do you think that we'll, lose a step offensive, defensively? And what side of the ball are you worried about more losing that step that they had this year?
If we do lose a step, it would be defensively. But what I'll say is this. wait till after the draft and free agency, and then
Yeah.
I'll give you a better answer. Because when we look at the draft, free agency, see who we bring in,
So-
we'll tell if the offense is going to stay put or if the defense is going to take a step.
So
it's going to depend on the draft, honestly.
So one of my things here, Evan, is that we need to keep going forward with the defense. And I do agree. I believe it's who you draft. But a thing that I believe is that when you lose a character like Ben Johnson, who's such in tune with your quarterback, I feel like the offense is going to struggle more, considering the fact that we're getting so many pieces back in this Lions defense that really, Aiden Hutchinson was out for majority of the year. So he's kind of, he loves Aaron Glenn, obviously loves that style of play, but I feel like he knows a guy in Calvin Shepard and he can come back and be an instant day one, effect player like he was, previously. But my thing is that offense who's been with a Ben Johnson type character, who's, learn and breathe Ben Johnson's air, I think they're going to struggle more because even though the terminologies are basically the same, it's just going to be a different vibe. But I feel like this defense is going to come back stronger than ever. I do agree we need to add some pieces in the offseason, mostly in that secondary, just to pad some of the starters we had because, when you have a guy like Malik Robinson go down in that Washington game and then you have to put a Vavleek in, it's going to hurt you so much. I mean, it was shown that it hurt. So
exactly.
I do agree
as long as you're exactly. I mean, anything could happen, but I would say, I'll stick to this. We'll say this for every team too. How each team drafts this year is going to dictate your future for the next 4 years based on who you draft and where.
And we'll be covering more on that, folks. We just wanted to touch a little base on the Lions offseason so far, the Eagles, Saints offseason, and how they're doing, along with the Chiefs. But we'll be covering the entire NFL, the draft coming up here, and we'll be giving insights, and we're going to be doing mock drafts of who we think is going to go. First 10 picks every week were released to the fans out there in the world. Look on Twitter for those picks, obviously. But as we move on, we're kind of in a lull here with hockey, too. It's kind of funny. There is a big tournament going on, though. Instead of the All-Star break, we're doing the Battle of Four Nations. Evan, what do you think of the play so far? You got some high-flying guys and, guys, for instance, from all around the league. But this could be a major issue because, guys like Lucas Raymond, he went out last night, went down, and then he came back as a big, uplift to the team and that Sweden team and help them, aid them in getting some goals. But how can this, this All-Star break and this Battle of Four tournaments really affect a team's ability to go win a Stanley Cup afterwards if one of these guys gets hurt?
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, if you look at it, it's kind of like a mini Olympics, so to speak. Yeah. And I mean, it's difficult because you want, obviously it's similar with the All-Star game, but I feel like this is more like actual hockey rather than more the All-Star game where there's fluff to it more than anything. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting concept. I love what they're doing. I love how they're trying to expand the game, not just to obviously U.S., Canada, but
Sweden, Finland, get them in there.
But they're actually expanding it to some of the guys' home countries. I mean, it is currently right now overseas all the way across the country. Yeah. And it's great to see. But if you're also a fan of hockey, you don't want some of your players that to get hurt. And next thing you know, you're behind the eight ball come All-Stars break, so to speak.
And that's one of my
with one of your guys down.
Is that you get a guy like Lucas Raymond going down. He got 2 assists in the game to kind of aid Sweden in that loss. They lost in overtime. But how good did Canada look, last night? That was unbelievable. That one goal where it was Crosby and a few other guys, and he made a cross-ice pass that was beautiful to see. I mean, it was
vintage Crosby.
It was. And I mean, that's one of the things I was just like, holy crap, they look like they're going to roll. And this is honestly great play because these guys do not play together. You don't get a, Sidney Crosby and a few other guys that he's paired up with. But who do you think is going to win this tournament first and foremost? And who is your X factor for this team? And then who's your outlier guy you really don't think about?
I do think Canada is going to win it, but sneakily, I do think the U.S. might have what it takes this year. I know we always count the U.S. out when it comes to these four, rather. Yeah. I do think U.S. has a sneaky chance. Okay. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a guarantee, but I think this year's United States team is constructed a little better than years past.
Definitely.
So I think if the United States plays the way they should,
Yeah.
I think they have a really good chance.
Okay.
I still do think Canada does take it just because the level of talent is there and there is such a gap.
And we haven't seen the United States yet. This tournament just kicked off. They play Finland tonight, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Now, you like Canada. Give me your X factor and give me your sleeper guy for that team. And I will give you, because I think United States is going to win. I could also see Canada winning, but I don't see any of the European teams really surprising us.
I think Finland might surprise us a little bit with the sneaky stuff. But if we're talking X factor for Canada, I honestly think it's Cale Makar. The dude, I mean, it's textbook defense right there. I mean, yes, Canada has all the flashy goal scorers, but we got to realize they also do have a great defense as well.
Yes.
I mean, I think the Canadian defense is going to be what propels them to be it.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, though, the United States does have sneaky as well. I mean, I wouldn't look to Canada being the outlier, the underrated. I'd go to right back home in our own backyard. Connor Hellebuyck would be my underrated. I mean, the dude has been in the running for the Vezina for now years.
Yes.
And honestly, I mean, it would not shock me if the United States does pull it out because of his goalie play.
Yeah.
And to Austin Matthews, of course.
Yeah.
But
going off to what the United States has offensively, I think the X factor has to be a guy like Austin Matthews. I think he needs to put up numbers, but I think also two sleeper guys that I think are really going to shine in this because they played at Michigan has to be a Jack Hughes and Dylan Larkin. I think that chemistry of being at Michigan and being able to rely on that previous connection that they had, and just the familiarity with both of the Hugheses and the Larkins at Michigan, and just the style they play, I think it's going to really pair well. Now, depending on how they have Matthews in the middle, it's really, for my thing, can they get these forwards gelling and sharing the puck and not, because you got like guys like Matthew Chuck, Austin Matthews, Dylan Larkin, Jack Hughes, Jake and Jack, Eichel. And it's one of those things that, you have these high-flying players. Can you get them to gel correctly, especially offensively?
Speaking of Michigan hockey.
Oh, God.
Do you want to tell me what happened this past weekend?
You know what? We can go check the tapes here, people. I told everyone that I thought Michigan State was going to win.
Yes. But come game day, what happened?
I mean, I really do think it came down to the goalie. I think your guys' goalie, I'm excited to see him in the wing wheel. He played lights out, even though, we had
17 saves, but 17 of those could have saved at least 5 goals. I mean, we were both there.
Good chances.
Oh, absolutely.
Had good chances, but they just couldn't get it done.
You guys looked like you were in slow motion. For reference, Pop and I were both at the Duel in the D this past Super Bowl weekend. And honestly, it felt like we were at the Stanley Cup. It was amazing.
People jawing
atmosphere.
at each other. I was yelling out there. It was a go green, go right, can't read, can't write. I was screaming that out.
There was not a single seat that was empty in that building. And seeing LCA that packed
and that loud, too.
And that loud for anything going on, I mean, it felt like Detroit was about to win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
It was pandemonium ruckus, and it was fun.
And that was, it was a lot of fun. And speaking of Detroit, let's look at how they're panning out, even though it is a break. Right now, they are second in the wild card, losing a game to Tampa Bay, who's the third team in right now in the Eastern Conference Atlantic Division. They are now battling for that second wild card with some hot teams like the Columbus Blue Jackets, Boston Bruins, New York Rangers chasing, and they're chasing the Ottawa Senators, who are also kind of hot. Florida retook the number 1 spot in the Atlantic over the Toronto Maple Leafs. Where do our teams stack up right now? Do you think the Wings can make a push to get in that third guaranteed playoff spot in the Eastern Atlantic Division? Or do you think they're going to play a wild card team looking in this year?
I mean, even still, if you guys are a wild card team, that's still a win in a season. I mean, you just got to keep doing it. I mean, it doesn't help.
My thing is that, looking at Alex Lyon, I think goaltending has been an issue. That
good
game
thing
I went
you
to
got
in
a
Tampa,
good future.
Yeah, the game I went to in Tampa before the Duel in the D, it was, 2 goals that should never have won in that first. It was 3 shots, 2 goals for Tampa right off the bat. And I'm like, this is going to be an uphill battle. And it was. Detroit came back. They fought, valiantly. But the thing is you can't get down 2 goals to a good Tampa team like this.
No.
Now, it comes down to, can you score in the power play? Obviously, they struggled to do that in the loss. They lost 6-3. I mean, you got to take your chances. Obviously, they played them more physical than they did the first time, out hitting them 32 hits to 28. I like that, especially after what happened with Edmondson and Kucherov. You got to kind of get back there, but you had 37 shots. So obviously, Vasilevsky, his play obviously was impeccable for Tampa Bay, but you can't only score 3 goals on 37 shots. I think that comes down to it. Obviously having 10 penalty minutes killed you, but you got to capitalize on the 2 power plays you had, and they did. They were 50%. But I mean, I think it just comes down to playing smart goalies, and obviously putting in Talbot in that first couple minutes helped Detroit. But it was just one of those things that I think Alex Lyon, we got to have serious discussions if you're Steve Yzerman about who you're putting in for that second hot hand there, because I don't think Alex Lyon is the guy.
I would agree. I mean, if you're Detroit, I mean, you got to use this time to break, to rest, to get everything back to health. I mean, there's no NHL game until February 20th.
Having your captain and your assistant captain and Dylan Larkin and Lucas Raymond playing in this tournament helps for just momentum purposes of getting them out there, getting them skating. But the problem is they get hurt.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you love this tournament, but at the same time, you got to hope that just health stays in everything. I mean, the nice thing is, too, I mean, it's a nice little break because, you lose against Tampa, but then you don't play for another week or 2 weeks. So it's not like the momentum just dies on you. I mean, use this, refuel, refresh, get better. Now, that's all I can say.
Evan, as we kind of get into, the thick of the All-Star break / this tournament, who are some teams that you're looking at to have a hot start out of the gate here as the standings go from the Eastern Conference and then also the West as well? Who are some teams that you're kind of looking at in this race right now that you can be like, okay, they're going to make a push?
Well, honestly, I think the East is starting to solidify faster than we can think. I mean,
so you think that these teams that are in the hunt right now are probably going to be in the hunt for the long term?
As long as you can stay faced, keep going, I think this will be your playoff format for here.
Yeah.
As much as I hate saying Toronto is the 2, I mean, I'd prefer to be the 2 if I'm being honest.
Okay.
I mean, I would love to be the 1 seed, play Ottawa, but the last time we don't have a good track record this year against Ottawa, so I don't like it. And I mean, I would rather play Tampa because I know we have. I mean, we have bad history against Tampa, but not this year. It's this year. Ottawa's had our number since the get go, and I don't want to play an Ottawa team. I really don't.
Fair. I mean, that Ottawa looks good versus
any team.
Yeah, any team, and that's what makes me scared. My team that
Out
kind of
West,
me right now is a team like Tampa Bay Lightning, because I've seen them play the Wings twice. One game they were totally focused on the body. The other they were focused on the puck. Quick goals for Tampa Bay is the way they strike. No pun intended there. But
shocker.
Yeah. Oh, God. Wow. This is really bad here, folks. But no, I think Tampa's a bigger danger than I would even say.
Eastern Conference, I would agree.
Yeah. I would say Tampa Bay is one of those teams you got to look out for still. But go to
West?
the West. Yeah.
It's hard because it is the Wild West. But at the same time, yes, I know Winnipeg's leading the entire out West. Winnipeg has showed us, have a lead and die in the first round.
Yeah. And my thing is,
so honestly, I mean, I want to say Minnesota. I want to say Dallas.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, it's either Minnesota or Dallas. That is my little sneaky dark horse.
Okay.
I want Edmonton to make it to the finals, or at least a Canadian team, just so we can at least have a chance to make history.
Yeah.
It's been since '93, and something's got to give.
Yeah. Something has to give. And one of the teams that I kind of look at as a sneaky on the door team, they're only 3 points out of the wild card right now. The Calgary Flames are looking hot.
Really?
Yeah, they're looking real hot in Calgary. But it's one of those things that they got to, beat Vancouver. And they got to consistently win. Vancouver has kind of
dropped off hard this year.
They did.
I mean, last year was an anomaly too, though.
But
let's
they
be
went
honest.
into the break on a 3-game win streak, including a game against the Maple Leafs. That was a win, 2-1. They played at San Jose, and they won against an Avalanche team that holds, I think, the top wild card spot in the Western Conference, which is good. So, I mean, obviously this team,
Calgary is also on a 3-game losing streak, though, so they got to get winning.
Yeah, they do. But I mean, I think an Avalanche team obviously can really do some big things.
How is this Utah actually doing well? Like,
Yeah, no,
Arizona's
that's
been
awesome.
buns for years, and now, like,
Yeah.
oh, let's move them to the Mormon State. And of course they know how to play hockey.
Well, a team that's been buns for years, and I'm just it's kind of sad to say is that Connor, I'm going to say McBride. I don't know why. Connor McDavid, or no, Connor Bedard. Sorry, there's so many Connors in hockey right now, folks. But he's on a kill streak. He has 49 points, 33 assists. But his team is just dog shit. I mean, it's tough to be a Blackhawks fan right now, but you got hope. Hopefully, you can add some pieces around Connor Bedard and get him a winning squad. But it's just like
they were just they've been old. That's the issue. Like, it's a lot of bunch of old heads, and then Connor. I mean,
my thing is this: is that they have a goalie that used to play for Detroit, Mrazek, and they were doing an outdoor practice before the Winter Classic in Chicago. And they would line up 5 pucks across and do a shootout on Mrazek. It took them 35 minutes to score 5 goals. And that wasn't even, they had 1 goal and it was all Connor. So I'm saying is that it's, when it comes down to it, it's going to be like kind of a Caleb Williams situation in Chicago with Connor Bedard. Does he need to make a move to better himself and better his mindset? Because when you lose consistently back to back to back to back,
well, if you go goalies too, I mean, he's not even their starter either.
Yeah.
Their starter, Arvid Soderblom, has a 3-goal average.
Yeah, and that's
you can't win a single game if you're allowing at least 3 goals a game.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking at the past 3 scores they have, or the past 3. 6-5.
Wow.
6-2. 4-3.
That's crazy.
5-1. 3-2.
Yeah.
4-1. I mean, they have lost 10 straight.
Yeah.
And the margin of goals is at least 3. I mean, you're not winning a game after that.
Yeah, and I mean,
let's see, injuries, is that causing anything? No, you only have 3 guys out for injury all year. Interesting.
Yeah.
So it's just a horrible team.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one of those things that you look at, like teams that, for instance, stretching it to the NBA. You get a team like the Mavericks, like the Miami Heat last night, who actually were squaring up against the number 1 ranked in the Western Conference, Oklahoma City Thunder, pretty well for 3 quarters. Then they got outscored 32-8 in the 4th. I was watching it with our friend Zach last night, and it was just one of those things that we were like, wow, this is crazy. How can you go beat a team for 3 quarters and then just not show up in the 4th? And it was one of those things that, when you have guys like Kevin Love, Duncan Robinson, Kyle Anderson, Terry Rozier, Jamie Jaquez not playing for personal reasons or stomach issues or whatnot, that's going to hurt.
And no Jimmy Butler.
Yeah. And you got Tyler Hero throwing up, 14 points. You got Bam Adebayo, 27, Andrew Wiggins, 13. And then your bench, basically 2 guys, Jokic Nocic and Alec Burks throwing up, 21 points combined. And then you got 1 and 3 from the rest of your bench. Like that, you can't beat a full team like Oklahoma City on, basically 7 guys. You just can't do it. So it's just one of those things that Miami's going to be struggling going forward. Another team that I want to talk about that is really, I'm just like, what the fuck happened to them in Dallas? You trade Luka.
You traded Luka. That's
and then
what
your
happened.
guy you trade for gets hurt and is out for a month. AD goes down. If people are getting escorted outside of the American Airlines Center, people are throwing death threats at the GM and at the owners of the Mavericks. People are pissed in Dallas.
Well, when you trade the second coming of Dirk, I mean, Dirk was their beloved hero, and then you find a Euro guy who's damn near similar to him, and you're just like, well, goodbye. It's like, of course you're going to start a riot. I mean,
and it's
he
one of
was
those things
loved there. I mean, he was praised as Dirk 2.0. I mean,
it's one of those things that I don't know why you traded it. But, I mean, this previous game last night worked out kind of for Dallas. They beat the Golden State Warriors 111-107. Kyrie Irving went off with 42 points. Now, it's one of those things we always said, Kyrie can carry this team. And, I mean, in this game, he did. He was 15 for 25 for field goals, 5 for 5 from the line, and played a heck of a game. And this, Dallas team obviously destroyed the Golden State Warriors, a team known for shooting threes. They outshot them 41% from 3-point range to a whopping, an abysmal 28% for Golden State. It's really interesting. We always say every year, teams live and die by the three. It's so boring in the NBA. Thank God for college basketball, but more importantly, thank God for teams like the Detroit Pistons, man. Right now, they are ranked 6th in the Eastern Conference. Evan, what do you think of them so far? Do you think we can make a push? And do you think the '05 year is about to become 2025 and we're about to become a really good playoff team? What are your thoughts on that so far and our chances in the playoffs?
To say the Pistons making the playoffs, I mean, neither of us we were alive, sure.
Yeah.
But neither of us could speak properly the last time the Pistons have done anything relevant.
I mean, my thing with this is this Eastern Conference race right now, the back end of it. You got Orlando, who might start going on a hot streak. Miami's going to fall in my mind. And I think, even a team, so Miami's going to fall out of the playoff race in my book.
I would agree.
I think a 76ers team is probably foaming at the mouth now and needs to kind of kick it into high gear. Joel Embiid needs to propel his team to the playoffs to stay relevant in Philly, especially, I mean, if Philly goes from winning a Super Bowl, then getting into the playoffs for the NBA, that would be a huge thing for that city. Obviously, they'd be coming unglued at the seams like they already are after that Super Bowl win.
I think your biggest worry, if you are Detroit for this 6th spot, so to speak, is Orlando,
because they do play physical and they have out-physicaled us. And my thing is, if you play Detroit physical, you get temper tantrums from Isaiah Stewart. He needs to control himself. He cannot obviously do what he did versus the Indiana Pacers and just hockey check someone. I mean, that's the thing. If you play physical, you got to understand that that's a style of basketball. People are going to try to bully you and say things. You got to remain calm. And I don't think this Detroit Pistons team has that temperament, especially in that front court with, Isaiah Stewart there. I think we need to move him and try to pick up some, talent that's equal or even better for him for that backcourt for Detroit. But what are your thoughts? Do you think this team has a shot against teams like Cleveland? They lost relatively in a heartbreaking fashion. Do you think they can beat a team like Boston come playoff time, or even a New York team that they've already beaten this year?
I don't know. I mean, it's a wide open top 4. I'll be honest. I mean, the Bucks are in there. Yeah, Pistons, Orlando's in there too. I think it's going to be any of those 3, at least any of those 4 have a legitimate chance. I mean, out west is even crazier, let's be honest. But I mean, I honestly think if you are Boston, just keep playing the game you play. I mean, they score about at least 117 a game.
Yeah.
And they're only allowing about 100 a game. So they're not just a sound offensive team.
Yeah. And my thing is for teams like the Magic and the Pistons, is they need to stay on the boards. And the Pistons did this over this winning streak. They didn't do it last night versus the Bulls, and that's what kind of hurt them. That's why they were so close with Chicago. But over this win streak, they've out-rebounded their team. They played in the first game versus the 76ers, 38 the rebounds for the 76ers, 56 for Detroit. And then you move on to the Hornets again, almost a 10-point margin in rebounds. And then the Bulls, 55 to 44 there. And then, last night they obviously, had some struggles, especially when it comes to they let the Bulls back in the game, and they can't do that. Cade had another good performance, but obviously you got to put your foot on the opponent's throat and keep pushing, because the Bulls are a team that will fold. We saw them in the first game, but it's one of those things. The Pistons do have a good look up, but it's still a lot of basketball to be played, and we'll see how they do down the line here. My question is for teams like the Michigan State Spartans. You lost to Indiana 2 nights ago. Are you worried at all that, it eventually, Tom Izzo is going to beat Bob Knight's record? But
I'm not worried about it happening. It will happen. I mean,
okay. But are you worried about the longevity of his team taking a loss to Indiana that could hurt them in the long run?
I mean, Indiana was also projected second in the Big Ten this year.
Okay.
At preseason, number 2 in the Big Ten, only to, I think it was Purdue or Illinois or one of the two. Anyway, projected number 2 in the Big Ten. So, I mean, it sucks. We've lost 3 out of the last 4. But that's the team I'd rather lose to, if I'm being honest, because they are a sneakier team.
Yeah.
That had postseason aspirations and whatnot. Not to say they won't this year, but it's the it's the team that I would assume if that's what the loss would be. I mean, I'm not upset. I'm just a little worried, more or less. All right, I know we've lost 3 of the last 4. Can we stop this skid?
And I think it's
before the Big Ten tournament.
I think one of the things that you got to really worry about here if you're Michigan State is the timely turnovers. You know, you throw 11 turnovers in this game. You're not a team that shoot threes, so your perimeter game isn't what you're going to be passing to. So you're going to have some issues when you're just attacking the paint. Obviously, getting outshot 17% to 23 versus an Indiana team isn't the best. And same on the blocks, you got outshot 48 to 38, almost a 10-point percentage point swing. So like you're going to have some issues there. My thing, if Michigan State can get quality looks from inside and really utilize their team aspect and pass the ball around, don't turn the ball over a lot, and play your game, rebound, and listen to a legend in Tom Izzo, you'll be fine.
Oh yeah, I'm just worried more or less.
But my biggest worry with them, and you can go after me, I'm sorry for cutting you off, is are you cooling down at the wrong time? Was this team on a good trajectory, and are you now just feeling the heat that you've hit so many games and your attrition is so gone that you cannot? I mean, you
took the words out of my mouth. That's what I'm worried about.
That's what you're worried about? Okay.
I'm worried that we hit the mountain. All right. Are we tumbling down? I hope not. I really don't want it.
Yeah.
But no, I am. That's my biggest worry right now. Are we did we get hot too early? Which I don't know. Time will only tell. But that is my biggest fear, is that we're losing when teams that are also above us right now are also losing. And we're not capitalizing that. If we can keep these wins rolling, we can just keep moving up in those rankings.
And the race for the Big Ten just got even tighter because Michigan beat a Purdue 75-73, the very same night that Indiana beat Michigan State. This game, I mean, we talk about the play of the big guys, Wolf and Golden. But one of my things I like to point out here is the guard play was great in this game. You know, they obviously shot really good from twos. They shot 44, outshooting their opponent by 1 percentage point, but they were more consistent with their threes, and they got a decent lot of rebounds. But I think the clutch play by Wolf to Euro step into the paint and get the game-winning bucket propelled this Michigan team. You know, he played excellent in this game. Obviously, some other guys notable was Golden. He played excellent. He got 28 minutes. He had 12 points. Basically, your big guys down below accounted for a majority of your points, and also your bench did too. Rodney Gale had 14 off the bench. It's going to be things from this Michigan team is going to be the bench play, and if they can get their bench guys to start moving forward, obviously Trey Donaldson with 12 points helps out a lot. He's been on a tear. He was 4 from 8 from range, 2 for 3 from 3-point. Played 28 minutes of the game. I just think if you can cycle these bench players in, Michigan will be fine. I think they're heating up at the right time. I think it's going to be interesting. They have a huge matchup next Friday versus Michigan State. I believe that game, let me look exactly where it's at. Chrysler. Okay, so it's
senior night for Michigan State is also the Michigan State game.
So it's number 11 versus right now the number 20 team in the country. It's the ESPN matchup predictor. I know this is early. They're giving a 59 to 41% chance of the University of Michigan beating the Michigan State Spartans at Michigan at the Chrysler Center. What are your keys for containing this, relatively hot front court from Michigan, and then, a player like Golden or Donaldson?
Play like you've been playing, out rebound teams. I mean,
okay, that's gonna be hard versus a 7-footer.
I mean, Michigan State has proven time and time again that size, they can take down size. I mean,
yeah, they have.
Pound it inside and get rebounds. I mean,
yes.
That's all I can say is just play your game like you've been playing.
Yeah.
And things will be okay.
See, my biggest thing is this game is going to come down because it's always a good matchup. Michigan State, whether it's hockey, football, golf, it's always, the
rivalry.
The rivalry. It's in state. I think this is the biggest rivalry Michigan has in basketball right now, besides maybe a Purdue. But I really do like this game. I think it's going to come down to the bench plays and role players
I would agree too.
For both of these squads. I'm looking for the man that had a big night versus Purdue off the bench. I'm looking for a guy just an off-court guy that you think he can come in and win a game. I think, a player along the lines of a Rodney Gale, as I mentioned earlier, if he has a big night and he facilitates correctly and is able to work in as that sixth man, I think they're going to have a tough time containing the Michigan Wolverines because they know when they get in their house and they get the fans riled up, it's going to be loud in Chrysler. It's Michigan State. It's going to be a great matchup. They play one more time in the final game of the season. How detrimental are these rivalry games now for the Wolverines and Spartans going forward as the season progresses?
I mean, they're huge. I mean, yeah, you got the Big Ten tournament upcoming. This is huge. I mean, you have to make every game count from here on out.
Now, do you think, obviously, out of Michigan State, Purdue, do you think that Illinois maybe even argues throwing there? Those four teams, do you think they have the best chance for winning the Big Ten and moving deep into the NCAA tournament? Or do you think it's going to be, obviously we have the SEC that's dominating, Florida that's looking really hot, Auburn that's still kind of up there as well. What conference here is going to win this thing, man? That's my question.
I don't know. I really don't know.
Do you think the Big Ten tournament will dictate a lot?
I think it will dictate some to an extent. But honestly, I think the ACC tournament is sneakily a little scary right now. I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but Clemson beat Duke.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, it's one of those things that all these teams are gearing up right now. I think it's
the SEC is going to probably be the conference that brings everything.
Yes.
But that's also because they have 10 teams in the top 10.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really crazy come the end of February and beginning of March as well. Those games, March Madness games, should be amazing. And hopefully we get a thriller in the end because I feel like this is probably one of the most competitive basketball seasons I've ever seen out of some big conferences. The ACC obviously is dropping off a little bit. SEC stepping up, Big Ten stepping up. Out of the top 10 right now, who do you see that is your kind of favorite right now? The top best teams in the entire college basketball world, who do you see right now as your favorite to win this entire thing?
Let me see. I don't want to say Duke. I won't go there. Okay. I think my scary, sneaky...
Make sure you're talking right.
Sneaky, underrated team. I don't know. Because...
Okay.
I'm looking,
I think it's a Florida. Florida for me has been good all year. They've been consistent when they need to. They've been great when they need to, especially against top-rated teams. They're 20-3. Obviously, Auburn has the best record right now at 21-2. But I think a Florida team is going to be a real tough team to beat. I think a Houston team, obviously, is a very tough team to beat, especially like in a Elite Eight or something like that.
I would agree. I definitely think you're right. I think Kentucky or Florida are the two sneaky teams.
And then you got a team like St. John's or even a
St. John's had a huge. I was going to say St. John's had a huge win. I think last night.
Yeah, but you could even say like a Creighton could come in. This is a very unusual year. You don't see like a team like Gonzaga coming in here and tearing up stuff. Kentucky's struggling. Wisconsin's actually doing pretty good, which Wisconsin basketball hasn't been relevant since Frank Kaminsky, if I'm being correct about that take.
2015.
It's going to be an interesting year. A lot of big name school brands are coming into it. I'm excited to see how it finishes out. Talking about, years that have finished out crazily, I don't think this is going to be such a crazy year for a league like the MLB because I really do think the Dodgers have ruined baseball. I voiced it to my two very dear Dodgers fans last night. I told them straight up, your team is ruining baseball. And subsequently, the Red Sox and the New York Yankees are. And I think
the Yankees aren't ruining baseball.
Okay, with the amount of money they have,
but they didn't really spend this year.
Yeah, that can be argued, but
the biggest signing they had, technically, was Max Fried. But
yes, and you talk about signings and big signings, and we bring up Boston. Obviously, the Red Sox now, they're on a all-time high because they signed Alex Bregman. And
that would be fun to say if you're in Boston.
Yeah. Bregman. Yeah. But no, my thing is this. And people are like, all right, are you pissed at the Tigers organization? Are you pissed at your GM? Are you pissed at, your owner? Scott Harris and Chris Ilitch did everything they could in power. They gave, Bregman the largest deal that he saw over the years, 6 years, $171 million, but they did not pay it as largest out annually, and they didn't give him opt-outs. I think in Alex Bregman, you could see him go a tear in the Red Sox. And I think it says two things about Detroit.
You needed to give him an opt-out if you're Detroit.
Yeah, you do. But my
We've
thing is
seen
that,
how no opt-outs, a.k.a. Javi Baez, has turned
it's turned really sour. But my thing for this is it says two things about the Tigers. Bregman does not believe the Tigers can win now. I think he wants to win now. And I think it says a lot to hitters that saying the Comerica Park isn't a hitter-friendly ballpark by any means.
It really
and
isn't.
He went to a place that he could probably rejuvenate his career as a slugger and really start to get that, if he has a killer year this year, hits 23, 30 home runs, I think he's going to opt out of his contract and bounce and maybe go to the Dodgers, because it's one of those things that if you want to win a championship, you go to LA, you go to the big markets, you go to New York. It's sad.
Boston's a big market. What do you mean?
But I mean, they're not going to throw the Dodgers money at
because they don't have to, because they'll throw that money, but it's smart. They'll throw the smart contract rather than the flashy one. Yes, the Dodgers have all that money, but think about it this way. They're not also set up for the future.
I mean, I could see that, but they've also signed some pretty big youth from Asia. I mean, you talk about some players that they've signed.
Yes, if Shohei's 32.
Yeah.
He's 32.
Yeah. Okay,
yes,
but he's still the best player in the league.
Right, but he's also old. Remember this. A lot of their guys are getting up there in age. Their contracts are long, don't have opt-outs.
Yeah.
If they start playing like crap, you're looking at a really tight cut window and you're screwed.
Yeah. And I mean,
they don't have much to wiggle with. I mean, yeah, you have all these big names, but at the same time, if you falter, then what?
Yeah, and my thing is that you could really build a team around Yuki, though, who is 29. I mean, he's a pitcher, but yet again, like, I think,
How are you going to build if you don't have money, though?
That is through the draft, but even still, I see your point, but, like, I think you're going to see a Dodgers team in the World Series, or at least in that conversation, for about 2 or 3 more years.
Of course. I'm never going to say they're not out of consideration.
Yeah.
But at the same time, with all these big names, I mean, we all get older.
Yeah.
And I mean, at the same time, some players with age don't do well. I mean, we looked at with Miguel Cabrera at the tail end of his career. He was not the same player when we signed him to those maxes.
Stupid that they threw all that money on him. Same with Javier Baez. And I mean, it's interesting because you look at a guy.
You look at the other team in LA, the Angels.
Yeah,
they've spent a shit ton of money on players that were good when 2019,
yeah, like Mike Trout and guys
Anthony
like that.
Rendon and like guys that were all stars in 2019.
And that's what worries me about Detroit, because they signed an Alex Cobb, and they're throwing money at him, and he's 37, and he just got hurt, and it's not even a week into spring training yet. And he was one of the guys I recapped last week. I was like, this makes Detroit a near contender for the AL series. And I mean, now that we're sitting here without a Bregman, without a Cobb, and at least up until opening day, I mean, I know it's early in the season, but how is this going to affect a Tigers roster? Because then you have a unproven guy like the rookie who just pitched last year. I forget his name.
Which one?
Blanking. We pulled him up out of Toledo. Jackson Job.
Well, look at it this way. If you're Detroit, I mean, develop your youth. I mean, look at Skubal. Skubal was a 5th or 6th round pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was a product of
the farm system that you've built.
Yeah,
and work your way up.
But one of my things for Detroit is that you got to figure out to do what you want to do with Spencer Torkelson, because he is obviously not working out. He was the number 1 pick in the MLB draft, and he's a dud. And we need to move him. The problem is I don't see the wealth or the return in value, the ROI, if you want to say it like that, we're going to get for him. And that's one of my biggest things, is that getting a guy like Bregman and signing him would have added a lot more people in the seats, and Detroit would have funded it, especially after the run we went off last year. Maybe the gritty Tigers can come back, but my thing is that, like, you got Green, and Baez is going to return, and I don't know what you're going to do with him, but it's one of those things.
Are you sure Baez is going to return?
He's on the pathway to return right now. He's scheduled to come in the spring training. But my thing is that if he can come off this injury and hit decent, because every new year you got to give guys chances. I'm not saying fall in love. I'm not saying I'm on the Javier Baez return train, but you never know with this guy. He shows up in weird times. And he could show up this year. You know what, guys? I made a mistake. We can win this year. What if he shows up and he's the catalyst? What if he's the X factor? I know.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I mean,
Javi Baez hasn't been good since we were 16, buddy. How's that going to work?
I mean, you never know. He could just been like just relaxing until the Tigers got good and they showed they were good. And
so Antonio Brown?
Yeah, I mean, screw it. I mean, hopefully he doesn't have a CTE episode like Antonio Brown and walk off the field and flip the Jets fans off.
I mean, I'd pay to see that again.
I mean, from Javi, that'd be kind of funny.
The AB situation. I would love to be in the stands for that game. It'd be wonderful.
Wild career, Antonio Brown.
I mean,
Central
now
Michigan
he has his own podcast.
Product.
I mean, we make sure to give him a like.
Yeah, definitely. Antonio
he has some
Brown
wonderful takes.
Oh, God, don't even get me started about Antonio Brown. But anyways.
We can't say on air because we would probably get sued.
Yeah, and probably banished to podcast hell. But anyways. We talked all week. I think the theme of this week, since it is Valentine's Day tomorrow, that love hurts, ladies and gentlemen. And my pick for dog of the week is Jalen Hurts. He played his ass off in the Super Bowl. He won Super Bowl MVP. And I just think the ceiling is gone for Jalen Hurts. I think he could cement himself if he wins 2 or 3 more Super Bowls as a contender for probably one of the better mobile quarterbacks we've seen in the game. I think he's better than a Josh Allen, or at least he has a more solid team than Josh Allen. Obviously, he has a better ceiling than Lamar Jackson right now. And I think he can even surpass Patrick Mahomes' prowess if he keeps this up. Evan, what do you think about that? And then who is also your dog of the week?
For me, I would say, I'm just going to go with Philly as well for you. I'm going Vic Fangio. I mean, the defensive masterclass he put on, yeah. I mean, you look at that game and, you could say everything went for Philly. But if you look at it, the fact that Philly got to Patrick Mahomes 6 different times and sacked him without even sending a blitz.
Yeah.
Or even sending at least 5 guys on the line. It was sometimes even just rushing 3 and still getting home and not getting beat. I mean, the masterclass he put in. I mean, it was unbelievable. I mean, it was 40-6 before we even got to the fourth quarter. I mean,
it was crazy
against Kermit the Frog.
Yeah, and I mean, my thing is that I'm surprised you're not saying the white corner Cooper DeJean.
I mean, that's who I wanted to win the Super Bowl MVP until Jalen Hurts balled out. But I mean, if Jalen Hurts didn't ball out and it just turned into like the defensive show still.
Yeah.
Cooper DeJean, absolutely. I mean
that's one of my things is that, this defense and even the offense, it was a masterclass. The Philly had it from the moment of the beginning of the snap. I think they had confidence in their team, confidence in their defense. And you said, this coach being what he did, coach
Sirianni, I would put Sirianni there too, honestly. Yeah. I mean, this Philly team from the top to the bottom, even to the execs, I mean, there's something special about this team. They know how to draft. They know how to do everything that it's the staple of build. It's like, funny enough, the process for the 76ers, but the way they build through that draft, I mean, it's why they have so many good players. It's not like, they just signed this guy for this amount of money, this guy for this amount of money. They're like, we just drafted him and he has turned into an all-pro.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot has to go to nutrition. And Cooper DeJean, obviously, he stellar physical specimen for a corner that is playing the top of the game. He got a pick 6 in the Super Bowl, his first interception of his NFL career on his birthday. The man must have been using NutriStack, ladies and gentlemen. And if you haven't tried out the NutriStack app yet, I would go right now to your local search browser and look up the NutriStackApp.com. They have the best in the business for all your supplement needs, whether that's protein powder, protein bars, creatine, pre-workout. Go to NutriStackApp.com and check out their products. It is amazing what they can do. And obviously, Cooper DeJean was at the top of his game. And just like Cooper DeJean, you want to be at the top of yours, go check out the NutriStack.app online. But from all of us over here at the Super Sports Bros, we want to thank you for tuning in and keep tuning in because obviously, as the season moves along, you want the best picks and what we think is going to happen in the Lions, in the offseason or the preseason for the Tigers, you want to hear all that stuff, keep tuning in as we'll keep covering them. We want to
Tune in
thank you.
at 9 o'clock every Saturdays while you watch your cartoons.
Oh, yes. That's the best time to watch us. That's when we release, folks. We want to thank you for tuning in and have a great evening.
Good night.